One of the most unique aspects of rallying, unlike other forms of motorsport, is that you have to contend with many kinds of road surfaces. With varying surface types and conditions come varying grip levels. Tarmac, concrete, gravel, dirt, ice and snow, and their many variations are all surfaces you will have to get to grips with. While you will be given the most suitable tyres for the conditions in dirt rally, it is important to understand their characteristics. Not to be confused with the camber that is associated with suspension geometry, camber of the road surface should be taken into account, particularly when cornering. Positive camber, where the road is sloped towards the inside of the corner, can help the car maintain traction and higher cornering speeds can be achieved. Adverse camber, where the road surface is sloped away from the inside of the corner, tries to force the car away from the apex and the racing line, so lower speeds are often required. Although most corners have positive camber, a series of corners changing from one direction to the other, where the camber of the road also changes, can be challenging, and you must ensure that the car gets out of the apex of one corner, over the crown of the centre of the road, and into the apex of the next corner. In some extreme cases, the camber is so severe that the car will jump across the road as it moves from one side to the other. Make sure you place the car in the correct position on the road so that you are making the most of the camber. Jumps are often the most spectacular part of any rally stage, but you must consider several factors when approaching them. Firstly, since the wheels of the car will not be in contact with the ground for a period of time, you will be unable to change direction or slow down while airborne. This sounds like an obvious point, but it means that you must ensure that the car leaves the ground with the correct attitude and correct speed in order to land in the correct place. If the road is straight, then it might simply be a case of making sure the car leaves the road while also pointing straight. But if the jump happens to be in the middle of a corner, you will need to ensure that the trajectory of the car will land back on the road. This is particularly important when there are ditches, rocks, trees or other obstacles lining the side of the stage. Weight transfer also plays an important role when approaching a jump. Depending on the nature of the road either side of the jump, there may be a need to slow down or even brake before it. Imagine approaching a jump at high speed, which has a sharp corner immediately after it. You would need to brake before the jump to reduce the speed, which would transfer the weight of the car over the front wheels. In general, it is advisable not to have the car in this attitude as it leaves the ground over a jump, as it would be likely to nosedive and land hard on the front, which could result in damage to the sump, radiator or suspension. Instead, you should brake up to the lip of the jump, but stop braking just before you take off to move the weight back to the centre of the car. In some cars, especially front-wheel drive or other cars that are nose-heavy, it may even be prudent to be accelerating as the car leaves the ground. Doing this will transfer the weight to the rear just before takeoff, which will further help prevent the car from nosediving. Remember, even though big jumps at high speeds can be spectacular, taking them at the highest speed possible may not be the quickest way to tackle a jump. The longer a car is airborne, the more it slows down, so you should consider taking a jump at a slightly lower speed to get the wheels back on the ground as soon as possible. Although seemingly innocuous, crests can dramatically impact the stability of the car. Even if the car doesn't leave the ground as it would over a jump, a crest can often cause the car to go light and unload the suspension and tyres, resulting in reduced traction. This is particularly important if the crest is immediately before, during or after a corner, and this should be taken into account when approaching them. The other thing to consider is that depending on their size, they can prevent you from seeing the road ahead. Again, this is particularly important if the crest is immediately before a corner. Imagine approaching a crest which you cannot see over at high speed that is immediately before a slight corner. It is essential that you put the car in the correct place on the road and at the right attitude to take the corner, even though the corner cannot be seen until the last second. Bumps can also unload the suspension and tyres, reducing traction by flicking the front, rear or one side of the car upward. Rally stages are usually uneven surfaces, but particularly bad bumps that unsettle the car or require you to do something different than you otherwise would are often called out in the pace notes. Bumps don't always stretch across the entire width of the road, and so evasive action may be necessary, such as moving to one side of the road. Dips or other compressions in the road surface can be unpredictable and should be treated with caution. Dips that occur over a long distance may not have too big an impact on the car, but those that are shorter can act like a severe bump, as the suspension is compressed and then rapidly extended, causing the car to be flicked into the air. Extra caution needs to be taken when traversing extremely rough terrain, with many bumps and dips that can unsettle the car. Care should also be taken when crossing water splashes, as they can, like dips and bumps, be unpredictable. Depending on the depth of water and the width of the crossing, the approach may change from flat out to slowing right down and just driving through it at a normal road speed. Hitting deep water at high speed can damage the front of the car, so it is often better to lose a few seconds by slowing down than losing minutes with mechanical damage. Remember, this is why bumps, dips and water splashes are called out in your pace notes, and where listening to your co-driver is extremely important. There are many types of obstacles that may be encountered on a rally stage. On a gravel stage through a forest, it is not uncommon to come across logs, branches or large rocks. Rally cars have strong sump guards and other underbody protection, and in gravel setup, the suspension travel and tough tyres allow the car to drive over most obstacles. Evasive action may need to be taken if the obstacle is large enough to damage the car or cause a crash. Lower suspension setups with shorter travel and lower profile tyres like those used in tarmac rallies mean that more care must be taken when making the split-second decision to drive over or around obstacles. Fixed obstacles such as gate posts, bridge parapets and cattle grids often require consideration and are therefore included in the pace notes with sufficient description to allow the driver to pass them safely. Make sure you are prepared to take the necessary precautions to avoid a rally-ending incident when you hear these obstacles called out.